Hey, what's up, everybody? We're live with we're live at the Grayzone with our good friend Katie Halper.
Hi.
Yeah, and we're also streaming at Katie Halper's YouTube channel. And we're streaming live at Rockfin as well. If you want to watch it, a non-Google owned place, owned by I don't know, some people involved in crypto, where you can pretty much say whatever you want. And we're going to be reacting live to the Dark Brandon address today that Biden delivered yesterday. It's generating a lot of online attention, even though the networks didn't show it. And it is a remarkable speech, maybe not in the way that Biden wants it to be remarkable. It was also a historic speech, maybe not in the way he thinks. I'm going to pull it up. I'm probably going to have to like sit through a few ads because, it's YouTube. Oh, wait, I got it. All right. Oh, here comes the ads. Excuse me for a second. So while I skip through the ads, yeah, here we go. We got Biden up. Let me just introduce the speech quickly. I mean, the speech is basically the outcome of a strategy that the White House has conceived going into the midterms in 2024, in which Biden might not even run. There were a series of meetings with court historians like the liberal historian Michael Beschloss, who impressed upon Biden and that the U.S. is in a struggle for its very soul, that fascism is on the march, and that Maga Republicans are the greatest threat to democracy, and that we do indeed live in a democracy, and it has to be fought for. And Biden's speech is the outcome of this, but it's essentially the core White House Biden administration message. And I think it signifies where not just the Democrats, but a segment of the Republicans that I call the Beltway Uniparty, where they actually want to take U.S. politics for the next several years. It's as significant in that regard as Bush's speech announcing, first of all, the AUMF, basically a global state of emergency in order for him to wage the war on terror. And now the war has come home, and this is what Biden was basically, this is the script Biden was given, close to not only what I think is his last term, but also close to the end of his life. He doesn't seem to really be thinking for himself as much as he used to be, but he was always a right-wing Democrat. So I think this is like the right-wing Democrat memed as Dark Brandon. But Katie, I don't know if you want to offer any introductory comments before we watch this.
No, let's just listen to Joe.
All right, let's get it on. So Joe Biden's coming out, and like before he even starts speaking, something significant happens, which we'll see. Should I play it like on a like faster speed or normal speed?
Yeah, like maybe 1.5.
Yeah, 1.5. Okay, but
full screen. Yeah, look at that setting. This
so
is
the
guy
settings
who's supposed to not be right wing or fascist.
Yeah, the setting's significant. Like a lot of people are comparing it to, some people are like it's Hitler. Some people on the right are comparing it to saying it's Soviet. You can see the silhouettes of Marines in the background, which everyone's talking about because the armed services are supposed to be politically objective, but this is one of the most nakedly partisan speeches we've heard in our lifetime. I mean, of course, Trump delivered similar speeches, so it's not actually that exceptional. But basically, what I think the Democrats are doing here is Biden's surrounded by these 40-something nerds who think the Dark Brandon meme is so cool because they had to flip the script on the Let's Go Biden chant. So I knew they would eventually do it. So they're going all out with this, but it plays into the dystopian and apocalyptic undertone of the speech. And I decided that, if you look at the card, the thumbnail for the YouTube video, I had superimposed the entrance of Travis Scott's Astro World concert above Biden. I thought that was kind of appropriate, and I'll talk about that in a second. But
it also reminds me of a little bit of the Roger Waters concert that we were both at the other night. There's a lot of red light imagery.
Well, Roger impersonates a fascist rock star called Hammer, who's wearing like, and he shoots everyone in the audience, and he's wearing a leather black overcoat, and he's being ironic. This is unironic. Anyway, here's Biden.
Please, if you have a seat.
Okay, Biden can't stop coughing.
I speak to you tonight from sacred ground in America.
I mean, you should have got those coughs out beforehand. So Biden's just getting over a bout of COVID, double boosted Biden, and he's coughing leading up. So he's not exactly a portrait of virility or good health.
Right.
Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is where America made its Declaration of Independence to the world more than 2 centuries ago with an idea unique.
Not the Constitution, but the Declaration of Independence, which is sort of a non-binding document. It's just a declaratory document.
Among nations. And in America, we're all created equal.
By the way, one more thing about the location is Philadelphia Independence Hall was where Biden gave George W. Bush, a medal during the Trump era for Bush's contributions to the well-being of veterans. Or it might have been at Constitution Hall, but I'm pretty sure it was at Independence Hall, and some veterans actually protested Biden.
This is where the United States Constitution was written and debated. This is where we set in motion the most extraordinary experiment of self-government the world has ever known. With 3 simple words: we the people. We the people.
Yes, we can.
These 2 documents and the ideas they embody, equality and democracy, are the rock upon which this nation is built. They're how we became the greatest nation on earth. They're why.
Slavery was legal in them.
Right. Black people were
For more than 2
3/5.
centuries, America has been a beacon to the world.
For just $67.
Oh, great.
You can make as many videos
If you
as
let
want.
me share, why don't you let
Never
me
need to pick
share?
up a camera.
Let me share the
As I
screen. I can
stand
play
here
it
tonight,
without.
Equality and democracy are under
Because I have
assault.
YouTube Premium.
We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise.
So should I stop sharing?
Yeah, but let me see if it lets me. Will it let me share? Stop. Share. Hold on. Yeah, let me just give me that link,
All right.
and I'll play it.
All right. So I'm just gonna.
Just put in the private chat. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. This is what it looks like when you're trying to protect democracy.
Yeah, we actually kind of started
It's
a little
scrappy project.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the founders actually did. They were sending each other private chats early on about, you know,
Oh,
Sally
right.
Hemings and George Washington.
What are we up to? How many minutes into it are we?
We're like, you know, 2 minutes in, 1 minute in, but you can just start it over.
All right. Should we just do? It's a lot funnier when it's on normal speed, though. I gotta say.
All right, let's do it.
But then it's gonna take so long. Hold on. Let me just do a share.
Yeah, I mean, he struggles through the teleprompter. That was one good thing even George W. Bush could do, was he could
really
read
had
the
mastered
teleprompter.
that. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's watch for a little bit with at regular speed, and then we can speed it up. How's that? Let me make it regular speed just so you can hear the
Watch
gravitas.
the first part is really the first section where he's just going
Quality
bananas.
Can you hear it?
Are the rock upon which this nation is
Go
built.
full screen.
They're how we became the greatest nation on earth. They're why,
Is that how?
for more than 2 centuries, America has been a beacon to the world. But as I stand here tonight,
He always has his face like
equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves
like
no
he's
favor to
squinting and
pretend otherwise.
getting like a proctology
So
exam.
tonight, I've
He's
come
always
to this place where it all began to speak as plainly as I can to the nation about the threats we face, about the
It's
power
not
we
sunny.
have in
Why is
our
he
own
squinting?
hands
Wait, stop it
to
for a
meet
second.
these threats,
Yeah.
and about the incredible future.
So like the threats that we face, like you go out on the street and if you're not talking to someone who is, you know, spent their whole life in some, you know, in front of a CNN screen or in like grad school as a like on the way into, you know, some PMC style type job who's heavily propagandized. If you talk to anyone, or if you know, anyone who's not extremely affluent, the threats they face are economic in nature. they're class-based, and they relate to inflation, unemployment, the neoliberal gig economy. And that's not what Biden's going to address. He's not going to address those threats. It's all going back to something that is very particular to the culture and idiosyncrasies of the 40-year-old professional political class nerds around Biden, the billionaire class donors who helped get him in office, and the court intelligentsia, the court intellectuals, figures like Michael Betzloff. And it's deliberately designed to actually table the real threats that people face. And it's this whole speech is a misdirection, but let's go ahead.
That lies in front of us if only we choose it. We must never forget, we the people are the true heirs of the American experiment that began more than 2 centuries ago. We the people have burning inside of each of us the flame of liberty that was lit here at Independence Hall. The flame that lit our way through abolition, the Civil War, suffrage, the Great Depression, world wars, civil rights. That sacred flame still burns. Now in our time, as we build an America that is more prosperous, free, and just. That is the work of my presidency, a mission I believe in with my whole soul. But first, we must be
How
honest
do you
with each
believe in
other,
something with your soul?
with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal.
He always
Here's-
says his T's very.
Donald
This is
Trump
not
and the MAGA
normal
Republicans
was kind of like the here,
represent
stop
an
it.
extremist.
See, you're going to hear a lot about this, what normal is. And so normal is reality, and reality is the ideology of the Beltway Uniparty and what passes for liberalism today, which is sort of like liberalism without the commitment to civil liberties. And this is not normal was the kind of one of the chants, or you would see it on a lot of signs at like the Women's March. A lot of the people who were wearing pussy hats who were freaking out about Trump were declaring that Trump is not normal. And they were also waving crazy anti-Russian signs and declaring Trump was Putin's puppet. And that was one of the things they considered abnormal. Yeah, Putin's boyfriend, and that they were gay because I guess being gay is bad.
Yeah.
But they're all pro-gay somehow at the same time. But anyway, the point is Biden is defining what normal is. And normal is the way things were before Trump. Because for example, Obama wasn't deporting massive amounts of kids. A wall wasn't actually being built. The border wasn't being militarized. The U.S. wasn't at war over large parts of the globe using robots to assassinate people, including American citizens, through legal memos written by the Obama administration. I mean, so this is essentially an American exceptionalist address that is seeking to define a part of the American electorate as abnormal with legal consequences for them, which I'll get into.
Yeah, I mean, and so many of the most offensive things about Trump's policies are things that Biden is continuing. The kids
Totally,
in cages,
and intensifying.
the wars. Yeah, right. So he just does it with he's not a bore.
I mean, we saw straight continuity, for example, on the drones. We saw continuity through the Trump administration with more drone strikes. And so it continues.
Right. I agree, Max, with my full soul with what you're saying. All right. Hard soulful agree. Should we keep playing?
This is such a soulful address.
Soulful.
That threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans.
Yeah, like the segregationists
no question
you're friends with.
The Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans.
He was
And that is a threat to this
he
country.
was close friends with Strom
These are
Thurmond.
hard
Right.
things.
Which he bragged about.
But I'm an American president, not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America.
Also, we should set this up. He said the other day that in a private speech, he referred to MAGA Republicans as semi-fascist.
Yes,
So
and
this
then
is him kind of dealing with that.
his press secretary, what's her name? Karen St. Pierre.
Carrie Jean-Pierre. Karine Jean-Pierre, yeah.
Karine Jean-Pierre. She's from Haiti, which is a country that
Which is rich.
Biden continues to destroy.
Right. Yeah. He's very Trumpian. He just doesn't call his shithole country, but he treats it that way.
Right. I'm glad we have an improvement in tone, but she said that if you disagree with the majority of Americans, you are extreme, which I guess makes us both extreme on a lot of issues. And Americans are the American population is one of the most propagandized population on earth. So by that logic, pretty much anyone who dissents is an extremist. And again, they're moving towards applying legal consequences to the views that you hold. So this speech follows that.
Yeah.
comment.
And I think, we can get into this. I think there are ways you could define MAGA Republicans, but he doesn't do that in this speech because I think he's so full. He's so substance free, and he's also so uncommitted and fearful and afraid of his own shadow that he refuses to say anything of substance. So it's all kind of, platitudes after platitude.
Well, and it fits perfectly within a political atmosphere in which everyone calls each other a fascist without defining what it actually means. And there are real definitions of fascism.
Right. And there are real fascists. Yeah.
And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful.
He really respects us as adults.
And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined.
All right, can we stop it for a second?
Backwards to an America.
Okay, there's definitely substance to things that have taken place in Georgia or Florida that where there are efforts by the Republicans to limit the franchise, particularly to felons and people who vote Democrat. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah,
it's something Brian Kemp did in Georgia. It's one of the big battles the Democrats are fighting, but that's not where this speech is going either. It's going towards introducing a new term, election deniers, which could apply to so many Americans, and so many of our elections have been contested. I mean, Joseph P. Kennedy basically bought the election for his son. The 2000 election was obviously stolen, and you had Democrat after Democrat on the House floor calling it essentially a coup d'etat. It was stopped. The vote was stopped by Katherine Harris, the Florida Secretary of State, who was a Bush crony working under Bush's brother, who was the governor. And then the election was decided by a 5-4 vote by the Supreme Court. Bush was the president-elect. And then a few months later, he proceeds to declare basically an endless state of emergency, the AUMF, and the Patriot Act, suspending civil liberties. So anyone who condemned what took place in the 2000 election justifiably, and there were questions even about the 2004 re-election of Bush in Ohio. Anyone who questioned that is now an election denier, and that means at the very least, the social media companies, we know for a fact, they're being pushed by the White House and all the agencies to kick off anyone who questions even local elections coming up in the results. This all goes towards January 6th, so let's move ahead.
Yeah. And of course, Gore, for those of you who didn't know, who weren't around or haven't read the history, Gore was did nothing to stop the stealing of the election in 2000. And there's this really powerful scene in Fahrenheit 9/11, actually. I don't know if you've seen that Michael Moore film, but there's this powerful scene where all these Black members of Congress are basically like appealing upon him to do something about it.
Yeah, that was a great film, actually. Yeah. And it was at a time when Democrats were actually against neocons. instead of actually physically against them, marching together arm in arm in lockstep as part of the this pro-war Liz Cheney worshiping
Cheney's are us.
Cheney's are us party. Yeah. And so basically what happened, I'm glad you brought that up, is that Jesse Jackson wanted to bring the Rainbow Coalition down to Florida and stage huge protests and, protests outside electoral boards and, places, polling places where there are vote counting taking place, kind of like what the so-called MAGA Republicans did in Maricopa County and other places during the 2020 vote count. And Al Gore, who for his whole life, ever since he was a boy, was being prepared to be president, sent to the right prep schools, sent to the right training academies. Everything he did was preparing him for this moment. He chose not to fight and to go on and start an investment management company, basically rustling up tons of money for supposed green technology. And, he went off and became a very rich man. So that's our democracy that we're defending here. And all those people who questioned the 2000 election, you're an election denier. You don't believe in what's normal. You don't believe in reality.
Right. Democracy, the vote. Yeah, that's true. All right, should we keep going?
Let's roll. Let's speed it up a little.
No right to privacy.
No, we're good.
Marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of.
He doesn't say the word abortion.
Right, he doesn't say abortion, and also they promote authoritarian leaders. Like, which authoritarian leaders abroad has he stood up against?
Who did Biden just bend the knee to? Mohammed bin Salman to try to solve the energy crisis he created. So.
Right, but he's not authoritarian. He's a reformist.
Or they're talking about like Viktor Orban because Hungary is holding up the EU plan to be even crazier on Russia. But let's go forward.
Or Guaido, he's a big fan of Guaido.
Real Democratic actor. Well, he looks like Obama, so
he does look. He looks like a little private school kid running for a bus. I don't know why I think of him as that.
That are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country. They look at the mob that stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th, brutally attacking law enforcement, not as insurrectionists who placed a dagger at the throat of our democracy, but they look at them as patriots, and they see their MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 elections. They've tried everything last time to nullify the votes of 81 million people.
You hear it
this
says
time, they're determined to succeed in thwarting the will of the people. That's why.
All right, so
conservatives.
So this is the threat. This is the threat. Like we thought the threat was going to be that people weren't able to afford basic foodstuffs or to get their kids to school in a rural area where you need a car or a suburban area. That inequality is at insanely record levels, that millions of people lost their places of residence under the pandemic restrictions and the CARES Act that BlackRock helped design. I mean, the threat that I hear that people discuss in the street has nothing to do with what Biden's addressing. They always go back to January 6th. And when they do so, they cast it as an insurrection and use this language that always has legal consequences in order to cast this murky group of people that Biden really refuses to define in a state of legal exception, so that essentially the security state can expand, surveil them as it did Muslim Americans during the War on Terror. And we see the manufacturing of terror plots, of right-wing terror plots taking place as the FBI did to Muslim Americans during the War on Terror. I mean, there were even Muslim American leaders who were literally put on trial in federal courts for the things they said in public and accused of terrorism. So we're just shifting the massive security apparatus that was built up during the War on Terror onto people who were supportive of the Stop the Steal rally and who denied that election and may deny future election results. So do I think they were insurrectionists? No, I was there. I witnessed it. It was a low IQ riot. It was idiotic. I mean, and in many cases, repulsive. But it
Camp
was not an
Auschwitz
insurrection.
sweatshirt.
They're fighting for a lousy cause. They're being duped by Trump into it, and then he went home and like just turned on the TV while they all got arrested. And beyond that, it was a security state trap. There was a stand down order. It was obvious. There were no police there. There was an armored vehicle out front, and a bunch of guys were sitting on top of it out front of the U.S. Capitol. A bunch of guys were sitting on top of it smoking a blunt. That's what happens when there's a stand down order. I mean, Muriel Bowser actually told the National Guard not to get anywhere near it. And I waited around watching Ashley Babbitt get shot by one of the few cops inside, watching her dead body come out, and waited hours until riot police finally arrived. Within 2 hours, they had dispersed the entire crowd. Everyone was gone. They all just went home. And that was it. And we haven't heard the end of it, because this is not just about democracy. It's about expanding the security state. What was the first thing that was done as a result of January 6th? A massive expansion of the Capitol Police budget, making the Capitol Police a national agency. And if you actually know the area around Capitol Hill like I do, much of what the Capitol Police does is harass poor people. There's a lot of homeless people around there, a lot of poor people. It's an area that, you know, layers affluence on top of extreme poverty. It's the traditional, I mean, it actually in the, you know, early days of DC as a federal city, it's where the slums were. So the Capitol Police are just kind of this brutal agency, and they were cast as these heroes of democracy. The whole squad voted for that. And this is moving towards another level with the FBI.
Also, you know, all this talk about democracy and not thwarting democracy. I mean, this is a guy who party and apparatus did all it could do to make sure that Bernie Sanders didn't move ahead in the primary. And they put
totally. I mean, you know, this language could be used about Bernie's movement if they actually posed any real threat or were a counter hegemonic force, and Bernie didn't fold back into the Senate. If Bernie had actually responded to the media the way Trump did about all the phony Russiagate allegations against him, if he actually had fought and he had his people out in the street.
I'm referring more to the, I mean, I'm not defending him on that, but I was referring more to the way that the DNC put its thumb on the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, we know that thanks to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Yeah. That was another aspect. And one of the greatest moments that the Bernie movement brought to us in 2016 was the heckling of the national security state.
Right.
The woke national security state presentation at the DNC.
Right, with Leon Panetta.
The Bernie delegates wanted to fight. They just didn't have a leader who was going to allow them to actually attempt at least either attempt a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party like the MAGA Republicans are doing, or to obstruct business as usual and protest and get in the way, because this is a pro-Wall Street, pro-war state party. And this language has been used before in U.S. history. I mean, first of all, let me say the Bernie movement at least understands what the real threats are, or did. They relate to class and inequality. It's not a bunch of QAnon believers running rampant for a few hours in the Capitol. And they have been pushed to the side and folded back into the Democratic Party. But this language does remind me a lot of McCarthyism. It reminds me a lot of language we heard about communists, which is ironic because the MAGA movement is ferociously anti-communist. Right. I mean, I saw, you know, these guys playing military dress up at the Capitol with helmets on, screaming, calling the cops Chinese Communist Party cops. And like, you know, everything was about China there. So it's ironic, but this is like a pastiche of past McCarthyite rhetoric, which was then used to define people who held communist views and positions in a state of legal exception and to drive them out of public life.
Right. And it is, you know, the whole, like, I may not have to agree with you. This used to be a standard liberal position. Like, I may not have to agree with you, but I'll fight to the death to defend your right to say it. I may not like what you have to say, but I'll fight. That is, the cause of civil. Basically, Trump broke people's brains to such an extent that people who used to be good on civil liberties and free speech are not.
Yeah, I mean, or that's the point. I mean, that's the point. You saw, I mean, we get back to the speech, but you saw one of these a former cop or an off-duty cop who swung a baton, or he swung like a flagpole at a cop at the U.S. Capitol, sentenced to 10 years in prison. Okay, that sets the precedent for doing that to people who are anti-war protesters who routinely are confronted by cops in the street. And every socialist who freaked out and had hysterical meltdowns about January 6th being this giant insurrection and secret insider military plot that needed to be crushed because fascism was going to take over, they, instead of understanding how this was going to be used against them if they ever decided to pose a threat to power directly, they fed into this. I mean, a very dangerous precedent is being set now. It could very well be used against the left. Unfortunately, I don't really see the left out in the streets as much. Anyway, let's keep going.
Like Federal Circuit Court Judge Michael Liddig has called Trump and the extreme Maga Republicans, quote, a clear and present danger to our democracy.
All right, sorry to stop it again, but this is a really significant part. I tweeted about this just now. I think I'm going to put it up on screen real quick. Michael Ludwig. I mean, this probably like passed without recognition by most people, but it shows you what a conservative speech this is. Hold on, let me get this right. I mean, this is a significant figure who is actually the former clerk to Antonin Scalia, a right-wing judge who is just being presented by Joe Biden as a hero of democracy. And what did Ludwig do? What was his most significant decision? He was a federal judge on the federal bench, put there by George W. Bush. He was considered a possible future Supreme Court justice because he was kind of young. He was like one of those good stealth candidates. His main contribution was putting Jose Padilla, who was one of these post 9/11 terror suspects who was just railroaded through the system, into a military brig. He ruled that he could be held indefinitely on a military facility without a civilian trial, even though he was a U.S. citizen. I mean, this set the stage for martial law. That's what Michael Ludwig's legacy was. And so Alberto Gonzales, who was Bush's attorney general, decided to actually try Padilla in a civilian court. I mean, it was a fait accompli that he would be convicted. These civilian courts, like the federal courts, they sentenced like 99.99% of anyone who's considered a national security risk to long prison terms. That's why Julian Assange won't get a fair trial in the U.S. One reason why. And Michael Ludwig resigned in anger. He was like, "You have destroyed my legacy by allowing a civilian court instead of military law to rule in the United States over terror trials." And by the way, Jose Padilla, I mean, this was a very shaky case. It was not a slam dunk case. He was obviously a disturbed individual. He was caught coming back from Pakistan with some money. The FBI was involved, and it was shady. But in any case, Ludwig resigns and he goes to work for where? What great beacon of democracy did he go to work for?
Boeing,
the arms dealer, the international death merchant. So that's,
you know what he said, Max, though? He said in his resignation letter, Boeing may well be the only company in America for which I would have ever considered leaving the court. Who says that out loud?
Yeah, I mean, so this is Biden's hero of democracy. You know, there are people, he could have cited, some civil rights hero or something.
Right.
But this whole speech is about trying to win over and consolidate the unity between the Democratic Party mainstream and the conservative establishment, the conservative legal establishment, the conservative pro-war establishment, the neocons. Basically, we're seeing the second coming of Bush's first term.
Yeah. The Boeingocracy.
The Boeingocracy.
Yeah. All right, should I play more?
Yeah.
Who the hell says that?
But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. We are not bystanders in this ongoing attack on democracy. There are far more Americans from every background and belief who reject the extreme MAGA ideology than those that accept it. And folks, it's within our power, it's in our hands, yours and mine, to stop the assault on American democracy. I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear.
To obsess about the past, isn't that what your whole thing is about January 6th?
Yeah, right. January 6th, hearings. You may have heard about them. Sometimes January 6th comes up. Sometimes Trump comes up.
Yeah. Well, like, let's move forward and talk about Trump all day, 24/7 on MSNBC.
Right.
So, and by the way, those in the chat who are asking if this is not Dark Brandon, but Trucker Speed Biden, because he's speaking so fast, we just have the video playing at 1.5 speed to get through it. So, oh yeah, Russiagate.
They embrace
Russiagate, yeah.
Anger. They thrive
Really
on
moving
chaos.
forward.
They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. But together we can choose a different path. We can choose a better path forward to the future. A future of possibility, a future to build and dream and hope. And we're on that path moving ahead.
Also, build back better. That's also a reference to living in the past. But
I know this nation. I know you, the American people. I know your courage. I know
Build
your
back
hearts.
better.
And I know our history. This is a nation that honors our Constitution. We do not reject it. This is a nation that believes in the rule of law. We do not repudiate it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We believe in the rule of law. I mean, this is kind of reminds me of the gun control advocates who say like AK-47s or M16s are not to be used on our streets. They're to be used to shoot Arabs.
Yeah, exactly.
Over there.
Yeah, right. What did Buttigieg say? Like, I didn't almost die fighting abroad with those guns so that I could see them here on these streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that he did say that.
They're for brown people abroad, not here.
Yeah, we don't have laws over there.
Right. Well, it reminds me, remember when January 6th, all these commentators were like, we're used to seeing this abroad, but not here.
That's the whole thing that makes me so disgusted with this, with the messaging of the Democrats, or one of the things that, and it irritates people across the left. It's like, you're welcoming Liz Cheney, whose whole career was dedicated to lawlessness in order to torture people who were not put on trial. She founded an organization that's now defunct with neocon godfather, or the son of neocon godfather, Bill Kristol. His father was actually the neocon godfather, Irving Kristol. And the whole point of this organization was to attack and smear lawyers in the Obama administration who wanted to put terror suspects on trial in civilian courts, or civil liberties lawyers who were against the practice of torture. And she called a bunch of Obama lawyers the Al-Qaeda 7. And it got so extreme that actually some Republicans got uncomfortable and the organization had to be canceled. As recently as 2014, Liz Cheney wrote an article in the Weekly Standard co-bylined by Dick Cheney. And the whole point of the article was just to defend her father's legacy by arguing that, in fact, Saddam was aligned with Al-Qaeda and that the Iraq war was justified. And this is the person that the Democrats who are clapping for this speech and declaring that anyone who has any problem with it must be a fascist. Those are the people who worship Liz Cheney, who want to like anoint the bunions on her feet. They just love her. They're actually the Lincoln Project and World Economic Forum are teaming up to take cellular tissue from Liz Cheney's brain and Dick Cheney's pig heart to clone it into the future ideal candidate of the Uniparty in swing states. So
with Rick Wilson's skin.
Yeah, with Rick
Rosy
Wilson.
cheeks.
With Rick Wilson. Well, Rick Wilson's
Oh, no,
actually,
not Rick Wilson. Sorry, Steve Schmidt is the one with the rosy cheeks.
I'm Steve Schmidt, and this is the Donald
The
Trump.
thing is that when I was working for McCain,
I'm out here in
what I
Aspen.
saw, look, it's better to have a sociopath than a socialist.
John Weaver was a great guy. He was always a model of moral decency when he would comb John McCain's hair because McCain couldn't reach his own head because he was giving away critical information at the Hanoi Hilton, and John Weaver was calling up young boys on Capitol Hill and sexually harassing them, and we knew about it and did nothing at the Lincoln Project.
Right. Remember he wrote that letter, that terrible letter about some experience he had at like the Boy Scouts, which just made it worse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he blamed the Scoutmaster, I think.
Yeah. Like for the reason he didn't say anything about sexual harassment of young men. The serial sex offender who from the Lincoln Project.
It always comes back to the Boy Scouts with moderate Republicans.
Yeah.
All right.
Respects free and fair elections. We honor the will of the people. We do not deny it. And this is a nation
again, Venezuela,
that rejects violence as a political tool. We do not encourage violence.
Ooh.
We are still an America that believes in honesty and decency.
Okay, wait, stop it right there. This isn't, I mean, how can you just say that with a straight face? He doesn't even say domestic
right.
violence. He doesn't even try to qualify it.
Right.
And like Joe Biden is up to his eyes in blood. Actually, those walls behind him, that actually is the blood of Iraqi, Serbians, ethnic Russians who lived in Ukraine. Oh, I love the
Haitians who he sent back to their deaths.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Totally. Yeah. They don't get to come on boats. Only Cubans do.
Right.
Because Haitians aren't going to come here and start some crazy right-wing lobby. I actually made a video of Biden, of just one of Biden's highlights with this, just to illustrate the point that I'm making here. Let me try to. Let me pull that up. I think it's very illustrative of the just sheer hypocrisy and like why people who are anti-war, people who consider themselves even, left-wing, God damn it, would have problems with this speech. Because you see all these like shit libs on Twitter saying, if you have a problem with this speech, it's because you're a fascist.
Right. Because you are MAGA.
You might secretly be MAGA if you have any issue with this, which is like what happened at the HUAC trials. If you
right, why do you care? With your, or it was like a big thing with 9/11, the war on terror. Like you shouldn't care about this unless you yourself are a terrorist. Why do you? What do you have to worry about?
Why do you care about privacy?
Yeah.
Are you engaging in material support of terror because you don't want people to go to NSA to go into your phone? Like what's wrong? All right. Well, here's a little highlight reel I put together with help from
full screen.
Yeah, with help from Esha Krishna Swami, found this clip we're gonna play.
And this is a nation that rejects violence as a political tool. We do not encourage violence.
Then, when I was in your position, I was suggesting we bomb Belgrade. I was suggesting that we send American pilots in and blow up all the bridges on the Drina. I was suggesting we take out his oil supplies. I was suggesting very specific action.
Okay, what's amazing about that is that would be an appropriate exchange he was having with a therapist about why he can't sleep at night. You know what I mean? Like why he has night terrors or PTSD or has this sense of guilt. But he's just celebrating being a warmongering, violent, bloodlusting Democrat, I guess. I mean, it's like the guy, the combination of being a dick and so full of yourself is really bad. And if we lived in a country with any historical memory, his saying about himself that all the major minor crime bills had his name on them, this would be disqualifying.
Well, he was the co-chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and in that role, he whipped the vote for the Iraq War.
Right.
Like we won't play it now, but the testimony of Scott Ritter, where he emphasizes that Iraq has no WMD. He was the UN weapons inspector who had been to all the sites. He knew what was actually going on. Biden just wouldn't allow him to talk, was browbeating him because it was interfering with the drive to war. And the whole point of the war, according to Biden's own argument, was to use violence as a political tool. I mean, he explicitly said so. And then in 2006, Biden did a talk at Council on Foreign Relations after violence had been used as a political tool to destabilize Iraq. He did a talk with Les Gelb, who was a longtime CFR head, on dividing Iraq into 3 ethnically exclusive confederations to basically balkanize Iraq, just as was done to Yugoslavia. And it's always Biden directing the violence. Biden, who I don't even think he served in the military.
No, I don't think. Yeah.
Son did. His son Bo served in the military, and his son came back with brain cancer because of the burn pits. And Biden knows that. So basically, he killed his own son because he whipped the vote for the war in which his son died from the burn pits. He was, going to the military because he was preparing to succeed his father in the Senate. So then Biden's left with like the stupid son, Hunter.
Oh God, yeah.
Huge tragedy for him. And Hunter is a real model of decency. Like, he's going out and buying crack with $75,000 his father gave him.
Good tipper, though. Good tipper.
Yeah.
Apparently. In
Yeah.
joints.
Yeah, he went to this spot on K Street. Not that he apparently smoked crack with Marion Barry there. So that was like one thing that he did to his credit, which is that he was friendly with Mayor for Life, Marion Barry.
And the other good thing is he's a good tipper.
He was considered a good tipper.
The dancers said, yeah.
Yeah, so decency. Anyway, back to decency. Decency's on the ballot.
Also, the violent stuff. I mean, he bragged about the crime, the crime bill, and obviously that has sent a lot of people to meet violence in prison.
And respect for others.
Yes, and recidivism.
Right.
For all hope, possibilities. We are still, at our core, a democracy. And yet, history tells us that blind loyalty to a single leader and a willingness to engage in political violence is fatal to democracy. For a long time, we told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it, each and every one of us. That's why tonight, I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind the single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology.
So there it is. It's the call for the merger of the establishment GOP and the Democrats.
Right.
Will put their own pursuit of power above all else. Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. We, the people, will not let anyone or anything tear us apart. Today, there are dangers around us we cannot allow to prevail. We here, you've heard it, more and more talk about violence as an acceptable political tool in this country. It's not. It can never be an acceptable tool. So I want to say this plain and simple. There is no place for political violence in America, period. None, ever.
There's never been any.
Well,
it's all law enforcement.
So who is he lecturing there? Is he lecturing? I mean, I think he's lecturing MAGA Republicans. That's what he says. But he's also, this is a pro-cop speech. It's a very right-wing Democrat speech. So he's being kind of vague there. And what he's dog whistling is that he's also condemning BLM.
Yeah. And Antifa, right?
Antifa. Well, Antifa's basically become like the street wing of the Democrats and like the Proud Boys. It's like gangs of New York and the Proud Boys of the Republicans. But yeah, it's sort of trying to get away from that moment when Mitt Romney marched with BLM and then things turned dark.
Brutally attacked on January 6th. We've seen election officials, poll workers, many of them volunteers of both parties, subject to intimidation and death threats. And can you believe it? FBI agents just doing their job as directed, facing threats to their own lives from their own fellow citizens. On top of that,
just doing their job as directed.
Yesterday and the day before.
Wait, can we stop it for a second?
Calling.
Okay, so again, I was saying it's a pro-cop speech. It's a pro-FBI speech. You see, like, Democrats worshiping the FBI now. And I was always frustrated during the BLM rallies in DC early on. There'd be these huge marches down Pennsylvania Avenue. They'd walk past the J. Edgar Hoover building and just walk past it. It wasn't a site of protest. I never could quite understand it, but now it's clear the FBI is seen as sort of a political weapon against the ideological enemies of the Democrats. One FBI agent has had to retire. His name is like Thibodeau, who was responsible for ordering the social media companies to suppress discussion of Hunter Biden's laptop, which clearly was a huge factor in the 2020 election. And like, before I say anything else, my point is, no matter who you wanted to win the 2020 election, and there was no candidate I could have supported in that. The FBI should not be meddling in U.S. The security state should not be shaping the outcome of politics. The security state is one of the threats to democracy, to the extent there is one, and we actually live in an oligarchy. And it's really the security state that serves the oligarchy, that rules us, and who Joe Biden serves as a marionette for. So the FBI actually, as Mark Zuckerberg revealed in his interview with Joe Rogan, was meddling in the election, silencing discussion of this laptop, which contained copious amounts of evidence of high-level corruption, as well as possible criminal behavior. The FBI also affected the election through the kidnapping plot against Gretchen Whitmer, the Michigan governor. That was a plot hatched by the FBI. All the leaders of the plot were FBI assets, bringing along a bunch of dupes called the Michigan Wolverines that no one even in the right-wing movement had heard of. And the craziest thing about that plot was that organization, the Wolverines, was infiltrated when they stormed the Michigan state capitol in April 2020 to protest the Michigan governor's lockdowns. And Trump had encouraged them to do it. So they're perfect targets for the FBI and the security state. And what happened on that day, according to one of the top FBI assets, who is nicknamed Big Dan, he was a postal worker that the FBI turned. The FBI gave the Michigan police a stand-down order so that they would let these armed men with their fatigues into the state capitol to intimidate people with assault rifles, because Michigan's an open carry state. So that really, to me, set the stage for the security state trap of January 6th. And my point here is that the FBI has helped generate this moment through a strategy of tension in which violence is not discouraged, it is actually encouraged, in order to compel the population to cling to the center, to cling to the Beltway Uniparty, which is really the heart of the oligarchy. They're trying to frighten us of what they call extremists, and it could be left-wing extremists, and it's right now is right-wing extremists, but this is the strategy of tension we saw play out in Italy. Anyone who really wants background on what's taking place in this country and what is really animating this speech, just read up on the strategy of tension, it took place in Italy, but it was being guided substantially by the CIA and its stay behind units through Operation Gladio. Let's keep going.
For mass violence and rioting in the streets. This is inflammatory. It's dangerous. It's against the rule of law. And we, the people, must say, this is not who we are.
It's also such a denial of American history.
We can't be pro-insurrectionist and pro-American.
Like just a clown.
We can't allow violence to be normalized in this country. It's wrong. We each have to reject political violence with all the moral clarity and conviction this nation can muster. Now, we can't let the integrity of our elections be undermined, for that is a path to chaos. Look, I know politics can be fierce and mean and nasty in America. I get it. I believe in the give and take of politics, in disagreement and debate and dissent. We're a big, complicated country. But democracy endures only if we, the people, respect the guardrails of the republic. Only if we, the people, accept the results of free and fair elections. Only if we, the people, see politics not as total war, but mediation of our differences. Democracy cannot survive.
It changed color. It got
There are
purple.
only two outcomes to an election.
That was that scripted?
Or they were cheated. And that's where the Maga Republicans are today.
Now it's kind of looking like it's like seedy. It's looking
They
like
don't
he's in kind of
understand
like
what
a
every
swinger, like a
patriotic
swingers
American
club or
knows.
something.
Right.
This is
Can't
like
rely
Plato's
on
retreat
it.
now.
Only when
The
you
Marines
win.
are about to start
It's
like
fundamental.
grooving
Stripping.
some dark techno.
American democracy only works
Yeah.
only if we choose to respect the rule of law and the institutions that were set up in this chamber behind me. Only if
It's
we
chamber pot
respect our
under me.
legitimate political differences. I will not stand by and watch. I will not the will of the American people be overturned by wild conspiracy theories and baseless evidence-free claims of fraud. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people.
Why are they?
simply refuse
Wait,
to
why
accept
are
that
they
lost.
talking about? I mean, what the election was settled in 2020 through whatever means. Why are they talking about 2020? Is he talking about 2020, or are they preparing for a future election which they know will be fraught with calls of fraud? I mean, who's even
Probably
running?
both.
I mean,
Mayo Pete,
you think Mayo Pete?
maybe. I don't know.
I actually prefer him to Kamala, just because he's less annoying slightly.
Interesting. I don't know who I think is less annoying. I feel like Kamala is like in some ways the emptiest vessel of all. Like really just no ideology.
Yeah.
Which is good and bad.
Or any trace of intellect. Like Mayo Pete can write like a college AP level essay.
Right.
All right. Yes.
I will not stand by and watch.
The people are cheering.
In this country, the freedom to vote and have your vote counted and be taken from you and the American people.
You know, another thing with violence is that we now know more than ever how little the United States is trying to mediate the war in Ukraine. I mean, the story about how there was a deal that was being close to being made between Ukraine and Russia, and then Boris Johnson went there and blew it all up. But that's another example of how Biden is, you know, this red color is perfect if we imagine it being the blood of Russians and Ukrainians. But this whole idea, this notion that he's a statesman who cares about decency, when we know that he's prolonging a bloody conflict for political ends that have nothing to do with freedom or saving lives.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up Ukraine. That's what Biden has been doing in Ukraine since 2014, 2015, where he was guiding a coup to remove a democratically elected government, a violent coup, substantially led by neo-Nazi elements, to today, where Biden has just approved wants $14 billion more of our money to send to Ukrainian warlords and like corrupt oligarchs like Igor Kolomoisky, who funds the neo-Nazi battalions and is at the same time Zelensky's biggest funder. Like, they want to send more money to actual fascists, like people who fit the textbook definition of fascism. I mean, fascists aren't people who get up and give crazy speeches at parent-teacher association conferences. They're people who are backed by industry, who are organized forces to enforce capitalism through violence and who revel in violence. And that's a perfect definition of the battalions that have been integrated into the Ukrainian military, the Azov battalion. And what is Zelensky doing? He is like Pinochet. He's outlawing all political opposition, arresting political opponents. They're being assassinated across Ukraine. There's a literal hit list that Roger Waters was just added to. Daria Dugina, the kind of nationalist, Russian nationalist analyst, daughter of Alexander Dugin, was assassinated. And that hit list marked her in red ink across her profile, liquidated. And that's what they do for the others on that. That hit list is run by the Ukrainian Interior Ministry that the U.S. is funding.
Imagine if that was a Russia thing.
Yeah.
How condemned it would be, how widely condemned. There'd be images of it all over. The news would be talking about it constantly.
Russia putting American public figures on a kill list. I just imagine that. Run by the Russian government. I mean, it would be out of control. It'd be on the cover of every newspaper. There's no mainstream coverage of the kill list.
No, I know. It really is insane. Have you guys done an episode on that yet?
We should. We did a segment on it last week. It's up on our YouTube channel. But if you go, just look up, Ukraine, the Peacemaker. Look in the upper right-hand corner. I can pull it up in a second, but I just don't feel like it. It says Langley, Virginia, and Warsaw, Poland, and actually the IP is based in Brussels, which is home to the EU and the whole NATO apparatus. So this is part of the actual fascism we see in Ukraine. It is being backed by U.S. industry, by U.S. taxpayers, and by Biden personally. This is Biden's pet project. And as I was saying, Zelensky, he's like Pinochet. He outlawed his political opposition, but he's also outlawed all labor organizing. You are officially banned under Zelensky's under his order from organizing labor unions now in Ukraine, or organizing for higher wages. The 40% of Ukraine's land has been sold off to companies like Monsanto and Bayer and Dow. The whole country's been privatized since the Maidan coup that Biden oversaw. So that's fascism. I mean, it's classical textbook fascism. It's like if you look in the Second Communist International and their definition of fascism, that's Ukraine today. And that's what the U.S. is exporting fascism. The same way, you know, the Five Eyes exported fascism in the form of ISIS to Syria. I mean, we just learned that Shamima Begum, who the UK is a UK citizen, they won't allow her to come back. She's in an de facto internment camp in U.S. occupied northeastern Syria. She was brought to Syria by a Canadian intelligence officer. They were flooding Syria with as many fanatics from the UK and Canada as possible to destabilize that country. So again, it's exporting fascism.
Right. Yeah. All right, let's go back to this.
Look, as your president, I will defend our democracy with every fiber of my being, and I'm asking every American to join me. Throughout our history, America's often made the greatest progress coming out of some of our darkest moments, like your hearings in that bullhorn. I believe we can and must do that again, and we are.
So he's being protested.
Maga Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies told for profit and power. But I see a different America, an America with an unlimited future, an America that's about to take off. I hope you see it as well. Just look around. I believe we could lift America from the depths of COVID. So we passed the largest economic recovery package since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And today, America's economy is faster, stronger than any other advanced nation in the world. We have more to go.
Wait a minute. What did he just say?
I believe we could build a better.
I mean, that was one of the craziest statements, that our economy is better than ever before. I mean, it's disastrous right now for most people. And the CARES Act was a huge part of that. I mean, they created a slush fund for Steve Mnuchin and BlackRock to buy up all these houses that people lost because they all lost their jobs. And then, you know, people got what, a check or two out of it. And the checks only came under Trump. Biden stopped the checks because he was afraid of, in Larry Summers' words, overheating the economy, causing more inflation.
The one time he does anything about global warming, his fear of overheating. Yeah.
Oh, and yeah, since you brought that up, a new slush fund for Tony Podesta they just created today, $370 billion in quote unquote clean energy funds through the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay. So it's just, if you read the Podesta emails, I mean, this is a Davos hovercraft elite who's just going to dole out contracts to his cronies, has nothing to do with reducing inflation. It's all about paying off the donor class and indulging their weird idiosyncrasies, because, you know, under what people call the pandemic, but it was really the restrictions of the pandemic, which were a political and not scientific decision, the tech billionaires, who are really the front line of our oligarchy, got 30% richer. The 10 richest people in the world, according to Oxfam, got 50% richer. Bill Gates' fortune increased by $30 billion. And the wealth of 90% of America decreased precipitously to a point when they have less buying power than they have in over 50 years. So what Biden is saying is just turning history upside down, and he continues to do it. All this money going to Ukraine and all the money, what they're saying is for, you know, climate change, is going to the upper middle class and the upper class in this country. And it's being run through Ukraine the way it was run through Afghanistan. This is just a way of extracting money from U.S. taxpayers and then laundering it in Ukraine and sending it back here to the executives of the arms industry or the people who work in the Beltway bandit firms in Washington, like Chemonics or Deloitte and Touche and Booz Allen Hamilton. These are all the firms that are, employing tons of upper middle class Washingtonians who move into the city or who live in the suburbs. And so this war and the pandemic economy, it's fueling that while everyone else gets poorer. And these are the people that represent the base of many of them represent the Democratic or corporate Republican base.
Better America. So we passed the biggest infrastructure investment since President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And we've now embarked on a decade of rebuilding the nation's roads, bridges, highways, ports, water systems, high-speed internet, railroads. I believe we can make America safer. So we passed the most significant gun safety law since President Clinton. I believe we could go from being the highest cost of prescriptions in the world to making prescription drugs and healthcare more affordable. So we passed the most significant healthcare reform since President Obama signed the Affordable Care Act.
Which won't reach you if you're older, because you'll be dead by the time it takes effect, but whatever.
We could create a clean energy future and save the planet. So we passed the most important climate initiative ever, ever, ever. The cynics and the critics tell us nothing can get done, but they're wrong. There is not a single thing America cannot do, not a single thing beyond our capacity if we do it together.
Except for cancel all student debt.
It's never easy.
Or providing health
In
care.
America, no matter how long the road, progress does come. Look, I know the last few years have been tough, but today, COVID no longer controls our lives. More Americans are working than ever. Businesses are growing. Our schools are open. Millions of Americans have been lifted out of poverty. Millions of veterans, once exposed to toxic burn pits, will now get what they deserve for their families and their compensation.
But not all who are exposed
American
to
manufacturers
toxic
come
burn
alive
pits.
across the heartland, and the future will be made in America. No matter what the white supremacists and the extremists say, I made a bet on you, the American people, and that bet is paying off, proving that from darkness.
That's a weird way of
putting it. Darkness of Charlottesville, of COVID, of gun violence, of insurrection, we can see the light. Light is now visible.
I made a bet on you.
Forward.
We can
Not
see
only
the light,
words,
but I look like
for you,
I'm in
for
a
your children,
like
for your grandchildren, for
pedo
America.
den
Even in
with
this
weird
moment, with all the
curve
challenges we
lights
face,
on.
I can see
I
the
give
red
my
light.
words of Biden, I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Not because of me, but because of who you are.
Such an
We're going to
optimistic.
end cancer as we know it. Mark my words. We're going to
It's
create
really
millions of
morning
new
in
jobs,
America.
a
Doesn't
clean
it look
energy
like
economy.
morning in
We're
America?
going to think big. We're going to make the 21st century
I guess
another
it depends on how
American
you
century.
spend morning.
In
The
hell.
world needs us to.
Oh, but he said we're going to cure cancer.
That's where we need to focus our
That's
energy.
like when Bush said we're
Not
going to
in the
go to
past,
Mars.
Not on divisive culture wars. Not on the politics.
Oh,
of
not
grievance.
divisive culture
No,
wars.
it's
This whole speech is a divisive culture war speech. This is the culture comp of the Beltway Uniparty.
Right.
And, I mean, that's all we're doing. The whole campaign, both Republican and Democrat, will be fought along the lines of culture wars. That's what we're stuck with because they don't want to talk about the class war.
We can build together. The Maga Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail. They believe America, not like I believe about America. I believe America is big enough for all of us to succeed. And that is the nation we're building, a nation where no one is left behind. I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. I still believe that to be true. I believe the soul is the breath, the life, and the essence of who we are. The soul is what makes us us. The soul of America is defined by the sacred proposition that all are created equal in the image of God.
In the image
That
of
all are
God.
entitled to
Wow.
be treated with decency, dignity, and respect. That all deserve justice and a shot at lives of prosperity and consequence. And that democracy must be defended, for democracy makes all these things possible.
And God.
Folks,
And God.
and it's up to us.
He forgot about the
Democracy begins
Constitution.
when
He
we
hasn't
observe
mentioned it.
in
It's
reading the
God.
people's habits of the heart, in our character, optimism that is tested yet endures, courage that digs deep when we need it, empathy that fuels democracy, the willingness to see each other not as enemies but as fellow Americans.
Wait, he
Look,
just called
democracy-
he just called something like 80 million Americans enemies. I mean, just own that.
Right. Yeah. I agree. It's like you're framing this whole thing as, it just seems stupid from a organizing position to spend a whole chunk of a speech, no, an entire speech vilifying a group of people, even if you think they're contemptible. This is the kind of like he thinks he's fixing he he thinks he's not doing what Hillary did with the basket of deplorables because he's focusing so much on it being a certain segment. But all he's doing is creating, like you said, like digging into this culture war. And I'm sure there are many people who are who identify as MAGA or could be go either way who are going to dig in now, who wouldn't have necessarily without this kind of.
Well, and that isn't that the point? I mean,
to siphon off.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying about the strategy of tension, that by polarizing the electorate and the population and then antagonizing a part of that population that feels justifiably or not oppressed, you're pushing them towards more radical action, which benefits you. And that's what I think the Democrats are aiming to do. They want more January 6th. They want to see armed men protesting outside voting, polling places or police stations. They want that. It's pretty obvious. That's what their strategy is in. And by the way, I'm surprised because I thought, after the Roe decision came down and you saw the outrage of so many women who really represent the traditional core of the Democratic electorate, that Biden would have made more of it, but he clearly is running away from that in this speech. I mean,
he didn't mention it.
They don't want to talk about that, and he doesn't really want to talk about the economic pain people are feeling.
No, not at all. Yeah, there's like no reference to that.
Well, the thing. Thank you for reminding me. The thing.
It always has been.
What? That's such. Wait, stop it! I can't believe I forgot that. I'm kicking myself. He couldn't actually quote the Declaration of Independence in a stump speech. And he said, and he was reduced to saying, the thing.
Yeah.
All men are created equal, and you know the thing. And then that section of the Declaration of Independence becomes the essence of his core message going into the midterms. So the thing.
He's so familiar with it. He doesn't even need to say it. The thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Their side there. They're entitled to be outrageous. This is a democracy. But history and common sense.
Outrageous.
Good manners is nothing they've ever suffered from. But history and common sense tell us that opportunity, liberty, and justice for all are most likely to come to pass in a democracy. We've never fully realized the aspirations of our founding, but every generation has opened those doors a little bit wider to include more people who have been excluded before.
Well, unless you believe Gerald Horne,
America is an idea. The most powerful idea in the history.
What part?
Well, Gerald Horne believes that the U.S. was founded in order to maintain the institution of slavery, which the British were going to outlaw, and that the whole American Revolution was actually a counter-revolution in order to
maintain it. Right.
History of the world, and it beats in the hearts of the people of this country. It beats in all our hearts. It unites America. It is the American creed, the idea that America guarantees that everyone be treated with dignity. It gives hate no safe harbor. It installs in everyone the belief that no matter where you start in life, there's nothing you can't achieve.
There's no hate. Hate has no home here.
That's what we
believe in science.
That's what we believe. That's precisely what we're doing.
That's what it says on yard signs in front of liberal homes.
Possibilities, focusing on the future. And we're only just beginning.
And we've only just begun.
Our task
is to
make our nation free and fair.
I'm just not going to be there with you.
Noble and whole. And this work is the work of democracy. The work of this generation. It is the work of our time, for all time.
He really exudes hope and youth and the future.
Can't afford to have anyone on the sidelines, except for the people who I've just said suck balls.
And if we do our duty,
they're just going to be in jail.
Beyond, then age is still to come.
We'll put them in quarantine.
All of us here, we kept the faith. We preserved democracy. We heeded our worst. We heeded not our worst instincts, but our better angels. We proved that for all its imperfections,
I think you actually heeded your
still the beacon to the world, an ideal to be realized, a promise to be kept. There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred, nothing more American. That's our soul. That's who we truly are, and that's who we must always be. I have no doubt, none, that this is who we will be.
Couldn't they make a brighter light behind it, like a yellow and blue for Ukraine or something?
Yeah. For the next 200 years, we'll have what we had the past 200 years, the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We just need to remember who we are. We are the United States of America, the United States of America. And may God protect our nation.
This is a very uniting
all
message.
Those who stand watch over our democracy. God bless you all. Democracy. Thank you.
God bless you all. Democracy.
Yeah. Well, any further thoughts? We got a
Not
lot of
really.
viewers.
I feel like I got a big Democratic
Do you feel?
boost. I feel more Democratic now. My
Yeah.
soul feels tinkered with, energized.
Well, do you feel that you're that you're freer to speak now, and that people around you have more freedom of speech than they did before that speech?
I'm inspired. No.
No, I mean that's another thing that the Biden administration is doing. It's not just the Biden administration; but they are taking a more active role than any other administration in online censorship.
Right.
There are new documents out actually this week. It all relates to like COVID. It was mainly the CDC leading the way, but it doesn't matter if you what you think about COVID or not. Even if you're not interested in the issue, it's a lawsuit against the White House and the CDC, and they got legal discovery. This law firm, it has such an anodyne name. I can't quite remember the name of the law firm, but I'll tweet some of it later, including some highlights. And it shows that all the federal agencies were pushing Facebook, and mainly Facebook, but other social media companies, like relentlessly to censor. And we're just hounding them and telling them what kind of content can be seen and can't be seen. Even the State Department and the Census Bureau were involved on a very intimate level. The Surgeon General was meeting with executives, and it really shows you how the sausage is made, because this is what's happening over the Ukraine proxy war now. And it's the Department of Homeland Security has actually a bureau called CISA, it's CISA, and it's supposed to be their cybersecurity agency, but they actually were doing what Nina Jankowicz was supposed to do at the so-called Ministry of Truth, the Disinformation Governance Board that was defunct. But they already have that at DHS, and they're dictating what social media companies can and can't say over the Ukraine proxy war. We just haven't had the lawsuit yet to show through discovery what's actually going on, but we know it is the state and the intelligence apparatus telling these private tech oligarch-owned companies what to do, and Mark Zuckerberg's going along. So this is an attack on what we would consider one of the few things that makes America exceptional, which is the First Amendment. They don't have a First Amendment in the UK,
Right.
or other countries in Europe. Germany, I mean, this is very unfree with respect to speech there. And this is something that the Biden administration in particular is doing and they're targeting alternative media in particular. I would love to.
Get worse.
It's definitely going to get worse. I mean, because they're afraid of. They always use this phrase, fomenting mistrust, or causing mistrust. And mistrust in who? The experts, the people who owe their careers to, they're like think tankers who owe their careers to the oligarchs and arms companies and corporations that fund the think tanks or endow the universities. It's fomenting mistrust in the corporate media.
Right.
It's fomenting mistrust in the political establishment. And that's what we should be doing, because they have failed us so relentlessly. So they're afraid of us. And I would love to see the documents that explain why Consortium News and Mint Press had their PayPal accounts taken away without explanation.
Right. Yeah, and everyone should be up in arms about that. But again, people have such post-Trump brain where they're just cut off principles that they used to stand by, because these people are just too threatening. That's just a bridge too far, Consortium News.
Yeah.
That's how they see it.
I mean, if Consortium News and Mint Press obviously it should be a badge of honor for them.
Right.
But if they're that much of a threat, it really shows you how the DHS and these intelligence agencies are working on a granular level to shut down any disruption of the narrative. And the Mason Gate emails that we got that show, UK intelligence coordination with journalists like Paul Mason, they are targeting the same alternative outlets, including this one right here, the Grayzone. They're trying to plan an anti-Grayzone summit. I feel like this is all part of the same mentality that animated Biden's speech. that
Yeah.
democracy must be preserved by crushing rights, because there are some people who just can't be trusted with those rights.
Right.
And they don't respect our agency.
Yeah, they don't. They're not centering us.
They're not centering our voices.
Yeah, amplifying us. Yeah. Well, this has been great, Maximilian.
Yeah. Thanks for, I mean, you kind of were the inspiration behind this stream.
You're my inspiration. Yeah.
So thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Subscribe to our YouTube channels. Hit like on this video, on all our videos.
Yeah, hit like, because especially because I hate saying smash the like button.
Smash the like.
Smash that button. But the algorithm is crushing us, and all our videos and live streams are getting age gated now, meaning that
Interesting, yeah.
you have to put your agent or agree that you're over 18, and that means you have to have a YouTube account.
Wow.
I guess they don't want the youth to listen to
16-year-olds. Yeah.
It's dangerous stuff. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sniffing any kid's hair.
Unlike our president, yeah.
He recently sniffed a kid's hair.
Oh my God.
Did you see that?
No.
Like, I want to show this before we go. I'm not saying I'm not like, is it QAnon to show Biden sniffing a kid's hair?
He'll probably get demonetized right away.
Yeah, this might be removed for like harassment. Let's see if I can find it. There was a recent video where he like just leans in. All right, I can't find it, but there's a recent video like at a fundraiser where he just can't help himself, and there's a young girl in front of him, and he like reaches in and just like takes a whiff. It's like
disgusting.
But anyway, you know, there's no like, we're not doing that. So to Google, stop age gating these videos.
Yeah. Do the right thing, Google. I'm sure you will.
All right, and you know, we started this early so that we wouldn't overlap with a certain other live stream that airs regularly Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you know, whenever I overlap with Jimmy Dore, people bolt from my stream. So I'll let everyone go there or wherever else they're going to go.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Peace.
Peace.